I was sitting at the kitchen table when my mother laughed at me. Not a small laugh, not a nervous one. A real, full laugh, the kind that fills a room. I had just told her I failed my CPA exam for the second time. I had missed the passing score by 4 points. 4. I had studied for 7 months. I had woken up at 5 in the morning, worked a full day at my firm, and come home to study until midnight. I had given that exam everything I had left. And my mother, Patricia Osei, looked at me from across that same kitchen table where I had done my homework as a child, and she laughed. Then she picked up her phone. I watched her dial. I knew the number before she even lifted it to her ear. "Kofi," she said, her voice warm in a way it never was with me. "You will not believe what your sister just told me." She turned slightly away, as if I had already left the room. I sat there and I did not cry. I did not slam anything. I just folded the score report in half, put it in my bag, and walked out of her house. I drove home to my apartment in Atlanta and I sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, not moving. I was 26 years old, and I had never once felt like enough in that family. I thought that was just my life. I did not yet know it was something far worse. My father, Charles Osei, died 3 years before that phone call. He was a quiet man, an engineer, careful with everything, including his words. He and I used to sit on the back porch on Sunday mornings, and he would quiz me on math. Not because I needed it for school, but because he said numbers were honest. They never moved on you. He trusted numbers. He trusted me. After he died, I cried for 2 weeks straight, and then I went back to work because I did not know what else to do. My mother did not cry, at least not where anyone could see her. She moved quickly. The house was reorganized. His study became a guest room. His tools were given to a neighbor. It felt like she was in a hurry to get past him, to close that chapter. I told myself grief looks different for everyone. I gave her the benefit of the doubt because she was my mother, and because my father had loved her, and so I believed that love meant something. What I did not know then, what I had no reason to suspect, was that my mother had also been moving quickly through my father's financial paperwork. Moving through it and changing things. My father had left something for me. Something specific, something legal, something that had my name on it. I would not find out about it for 3 more years. And by then, it would already be gone. My brother Kofi was 31, and he had never held a job for more than 18 months. That is not me being cruel. That is just true. He had tried personal training, tried selling insurance, tried a clothing line with a logo he designed himself in a free app. Every time something failed, our mother caught him. She paid his rent twice. She co-signed a car loan he defaulted on. She gave him money for a restaurant he wanted to open in Buckhead, a Ghanaian fusion place with a name I could never remember because it changed twice during the planning stage. When that restaurant failed before it even opened, she did not demand the money back. She told him it was an investment. She told him the next idea would be the one. When I asked her once, carefully, if she was worried about Kofi's finances, she looked at me with something I can only describe as warning. "Kofi has a big heart," she said. "He just needs the right opportunity." I was working 50-hour weeks at that point, taking on extra audit files to save money for my exam fees and study materials. I had not asked my mother for a single dollar since I was 22. I did not think that was something to be proud of. I just thought it was how things were. I was the one who managed. Kofi was the one who was managed for. That was the family system. I accepted it because I did not know how much that system had cost me. I worked at Harman and Price Logistics, a mid-size firm in Midtown Atlanta that handled freight accounting and compliance for regional carriers. It was not glamorous work, but it was real work, the kind that required precision and follow-through. I had been there for 2 years as a junior accountant, and I was good at it. My manager, a serious and fair woman named Delphine Ward, was one of the firm's senior partners. She had a reputation in the office for being exacting. She did not give compliments easily. The first time she told me my reconciliation report was thorough, I actually saved the email. I wanted to pass the CPA exam so badly because I wanted her to see me as someone worth investing in. I wanted to stop being junior. I wanted a title that matched the work I was already doing. After my second failed exam, I went back to the office the following Monday, and I said nothing about it to anyone. I sat at my desk and I opened my files and I worked. Delphine walked past my office 3 times that morning. On the third pass, she stopped. "You look like you haven't slept," she said. It was not a question. "I'm fine," I told her. She looked at me for a moment, just looked, the way people do when they are deciding whether to press or let it go. Then she said, "Come find me before lunch." I nodded. I did not know yet that conversation would change everything. Delphine's office was neat in a way that felt intentional. No clutter, no decoration for decoration's sake. One framed photo on her desk, a woman I assumed was her mother, and a small cactus by the window. She waved me into the chair across from her, and then she did something I did not expect. She closed the door. "I heard about the exam," she said. I felt my face go tight. Word traveled fast in small offices. "I'm retaking it," I said. "I know," she said. "That's not why I asked you in." She opened a folder on her desk. It was not a client file. I could see my name on the tab. "During last quarter's internal compensation review, I pulled your tax documents as part of standard HR audit. I want to ask you about something, and I need you to be honest with me." I felt a chill I could not explain. My taxes were straightforward. I had one income, one employer, no complications. "Okay," I said. "Your filing lists you as the named beneficiary of a trust established by your father." She said it simply, just that. "A trust," I repeated. Something was moving inside my chest that I could not name yet. "Yes," she said. "Do you know anything about it?" I sat very still. "No," I said. "I don't." Delphine put the folder down slowly and looked at me with an expression I would come to recognize over the following weeks. It was not pity. It was something quieter and more serious than that. "Then we need to talk," she said. "My father had established the trust 4 months before he died. He did not tell me about it directly. That was not unusual for him. He was the kind of man who arranged things quietly and revealed them when the time was right. He had named me the sole beneficiary. The trust held $47,000, earmarked specifically for my professional development, education costs, and housing. He had also named a co-trustee, someone with legal authority to manage distributions alongside the appointed trust administrator. That co-trustee was my mother, Patricia Osei. Delphine explained all of this to me in careful, measured language. She was not an estate attorney by training, but she knew enough from years of financial compliance work to understand what she was looking at, and what she was looking at troubled her. The trust still appeared in my tax records because it had been filed under my Social Security number. But when she pulled the activity reports through the firm's licensed financial database, the fund balance showed 0. It had been drawn down completely. Not gradually over time, not in distributions to me, but in 2 large transfers made 18 months after my father's death, both authorized under my mother's co-trustee signature. Both wired to the same account. Delphine slid a printed page across the desk. The receiving account was registered to a business entity. The business was called Kofi's Table LLC. The same restaurant that never opened. The same venture that failed. My father's money for me had paid for my brother's dream. I went home that night and I sat on my bathroom floor for a long time. Not crying. Just sitting. Thinking about every moment in the past 3 years when I had blamed myself for being behind. Every time I skipped lunch to save money. Every time I bought the cheaper study materials. Every time I turned down a trip or a dinner because I was watching my account. I had been watching my account so carefully because I believed I had nothing to fall back on. And I had been right, I did have nothing to fall back on, but not because my father had left me nothing. Because someone had taken what he left. I thought about the day I moved into my apartment. I was so proud of that apartment. It was small and the heating was unreliable and the parking was a 15-minute walk, but I had chosen it and I had paid for it myself and that had meant something to me. I wondered that night whether I would have chosen something different if I had known the truth. Whether I would have had more options. Then I stopped wondering because wondering was not going to help me. What was going to help me was information. And precision. And patience. Those were things I actually had. My father had raised me on numbers and numbers were honest. They never moved on you. My mother had moved the money, but the numbers still knew where it went. I just needed someone to help me follow them. Delphine came back to me 3 days later. She had made some calls. Not to authorities, not yet. Just to people she trusted in the estate law world, quiet conversations, no names given. What she had learned confirmed what the documents already suggested. The transfers from my father's trust had been authorized using my mother's co-trustee signature. That was legal on its face. Co-trustees have disbursement authority. But the disbursements had to meet the trust's stated purpose. My father's trust was explicit. The funds were designated for Maya Osei's professional development, education, and housing only. Sending money to a business entity owned by my brother was not an authorized distribution. It was a misuse of fiduciary duty. And there was something else. One of the transfer authorizations included a second signature, one that was supposed to be mine. The trust required dual sign-off for any disbursement above $10,000. Both of the transfers exceeded that threshold. My signature appeared on both documents. I had never signed either of them. Delphine said this quietly and then she waited. She was giving me space to respond, to deny it, to offer some explanation I might have forgotten. I had none. I had never seen those documents before that day. My signature was forged, I said. I said it plainly because it was plain. Delphine nodded once. Yes, she said. That's what it appears to be. She picked up her pen. Maya, this is not something I can handle informally. This is going to require a real attorney. Do you want my help finding one, or would you rather I step back? I looked at her. Don't step back, I said. Her name was Audra Fleming. She was an estate and probate attorney in Decatur, small firm, sharp reputation, exactly the kind of person who did not waste words. Delphine had known her for years through a professional women's network and trusted her without reservation. Audra met me on a Thursday evening in her office. I brought everything I had. The tax documents Delphine had flagged, the trust summary, and the printed transfer records. Audra read through all of it without speaking. She asked me 2 questions. First, had I ever received any distributions from this trust? No. Second, had I ever signed any document related to my father's estate after his death? Only the standard death certificate acknowledgement my mother had handed me at the kitchen table, 6 weeks after the funeral. Audra made a note. Then she told me what we were dealing with in clear language. My mother had breached her fiduciary duty as co-trustee. The disbursements were unauthorized under the trust's stated terms. The forged signature on the transfer documents elevated this from a civil matter to a potential criminal one. Specifically, signature forgery in financial documents is a felony under Georgia law. The money had gone to a business registered in my brother's name. Depending on what Kofi knew, he could be implicated as well. Audra folded her hands on the desk. "I want to be honest with you," she said. "This is going to take time to build properly. And it is going to be painful. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about my mother's laugh. "Yes," I said. Audra filed a formal request with the Georgia Probate Court for a full accounting of my father's trust within 2 weeks of our first meeting. This was entirely legal, entirely standard for a named beneficiary, and it gave us the right to compel the release of all trust-related documents. My mother would receive notice of the filing. There was no way around that. Audra prepared me carefully. "When she contacts you," she said, "and she will, I want you to say as little as possible. Do not tell her what you know. Do not tell her who you are working with. Let her believe this is a routine matter, an administrative review." I asked Audra how long that would hold. She said maybe 2 weeks. Long enough. In the meantime, I kept going to work. I kept my head down. I responded to my mother's first text, a breezy message asking if I was coming to Sunday dinner, with a short and normal reply. "Something came up," I told her. "Maybe next week." She did not push. She never pushed with me the way she would have with Kofi. With Kofi, she would have called twice and sent food. With me, one unanswered text was enough. That told me everything I needed to know about how invisible I had been in that family. And for the first time in my life, I decided to use that invisibility on purpose. The probate court request took 11 days to process. When the documents came back, Audra called me into her office, and we went through them page by page. The trust had been established on March 14th, 3 years ago, just under 4 months before my father's death. He had worked with a local estate attorney named Bernard Holt, a man who had been in practice for 30 years and who had drawn up both my parents' wills as well as the trust instrument. The trust terms were unambiguous. Every dollar was for me. My father had been careful with the language in a way that made me think he had anticipated something. He had specified not just the purpose of the funds, but had added a clause requiring that any distribution be accompanied by documentation proving it served the trust's stated beneficiary. My mother had not provided any such documentation. The paperwork in the trust file showed only the transfer authorizations and the wire confirmations. No receipts, no purpose statements, no supporting evidence that the money had been used for my education or housing. Just my mother's signature, a forged version of mine, and $47,000 leaving the account in 2 clean movements. Audra also flagged something else. Bernard Holt's signature appeared as the supervising attorney on both transfer authorizations. He either didn't review them properly, Audra said, or he was complicit. She added his name to her inquiry list. The net was widening. My mother called me on a Tuesday evening, 11 days after the probate filing. I was at my desk at home working through a practice exam section. Her name lit up my phone and I let it ring twice before I answered, just long enough to settle my voice. Maya. Her tone was different from usual. Not warm, not laughing. Careful. "I got some kind of notice from a court," she said. "About your father's trust. Do you know anything about that?" I kept my voice completely even. "The firm's HR department does a standard financial review annually," I said. "They flagged a trust under my name and submitted a routine inquiry. It's probably just administrative." There was a pause. "A routine inquiry," she repeated. "Yes," I said. Another pause, longer this time. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't think it was a big deal, I said. It's paperwork. I could hear her breathing. She was calculating something. I waited. You know I handled all of that after your father died, she said. It was a very hard time for all of us. I know, I said. My voice stayed level, warm even, soft at the edges. I'm sure it'll be fine, Mom. She said goodbye shortly after. The moment I hung up, I sat completely still for 30 seconds. She had not asked what the trust contained. She had not asked whether I was entitled to anything. She had only asked why I had not told her. She was not worried about the trust. She was worried about being caught. Audra's investigator located Kofi's Table LLC in the Georgia Secretary of State's business registry without difficulty. It was registered 18 months after my father's death, the same month as the first wire transfer. Kofi was listed as the sole owner and registered agent. The business address was a commercial kitchen space in Buckhead that had been rented for 8 months before the lease was terminated. The restaurant never obtained a health inspection certificate. It never filed a sales tax return. It had no employees on record, no business bank account activity after the second transfer cleared, and no evidence of any revenue ever. $47,000 had walked into that LLC and dissolved. When Audra's investigator pulled the rental records for the Buckhead space, the monthly rate was listed at $3,000. 8 months of rent came to $24,000. The remaining $23,000 had no traceable business purpose. It had gone somewhere, but not into equipment, not into inventory, not into staffing. Audra said this quietly, and I understood what it meant without her having to finish the sentence. The money had not built a restaurant. It had funded my brother's life while he decided what to do next. My father had worked carefully and honestly his entire career to give me a foundation. And it had been walked out the back door while I was at my desk studying for an exam I could not afford to fail. 3 weeks into Audra's investigation, Kofi called me. It was a Saturday morning and I was at the laundromat, which was the most ordinary and grounding place I could think of. His voice when I answered was too casual, that practiced lightness he used when he wanted something. Hey sis. Haven't heard from you in a while. I've been busy, I said. Work stuff. Right. A pause. Mom said something about some court thing. With Dad's stuff. There it was. She had told him. It's nothing, I said, using the same steady voice I had used with her. Some HR thing at the firm. They're thorough. Okay, yeah. He laughed, short and nervous. I was just checking. You know Mom gets stressed. I know, I said. Tell her not to worry. After I hung up, I stood between the dryers and I let myself feel it for exactly 60 seconds. The fact that they had spoken. The fact that he called not because he missed me, but because he was worried. The fact that neither of them had asked whether I was okay or whether I had received anything from my father's estate, because they already knew I hadn't. They knew, and they had let me struggle, and they had said nothing. 60 seconds. Then I put my phone back in my pocket, and I moved my laundry to the dryer, and I texted Audra to let her know Kofi had made contact. She replied in 4 minutes. She said it was a good sign. It meant they were rattled. It meant we were close. The forensic accountant Audra brought in was named Victor Slade. He was a former IRS examiner, quiet and thorough, the kind of man who found pleasure in a paper trail the way some people find pleasure in a good book. He spent 10 days working through the LLC's financial records, the trust disbursement documents, and the bank statements Audra had obtained through the probate court's compelled disclosure order. His findings came in a 23-page report. The summary on the first page was enough. The $47,000 transferred from my father's trust had been dispersed in two wires. The first wire, $28,000, had cleared within 3 days of the LLC's formation and had been used primarily to cover Kofi's personal expenses during the period, rent on his apartment, car payments, and groceries based on the merchant categories attached to the debit account. The second wire, $19,000, had partially funded the Buckhead commercial kitchen lease before the rest disappeared into general personal spending. Victor's report stated plainly that no portion of either disbursement could be attributed to any legitimate business purpose under standard accounting principles. He also flagged the forged signature on the authorization forms. He had compared them to a genuine sample of my signature from my employee tax filings. They did not match. In Victor's professional opinion, the documents had been signed by the same hand as Patricia Osei's authorization signature, written small and altered to approximate mine. Audra read me that section, and then she looked up. "We have everything we need," she said. Kofi announced his housewarming party on a Sunday afternoon. He texted the family group chat, a thread I was still on despite months of near silence, a photo of himself in front of a house in Smyrna, a brick ranch with a 2-car garage and fresh landscaping. "Moving in next weekend," the message read. "Party the Saturday after. Mom is cooking. Bring something to drink." I stared at the photo for a long time. The house. I thought about the price of houses in Smyrna, the market value, the down payment that would have been required. I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Audra immediately. She called me within the hour. She had already thought of the same question. She assigned Victor Slade to pull the property records. He came back the next morning. The house had been purchased 6 weeks earlier. The down payment was $11,000, paid by wire transfer from a personal account in Patricia Osei's name. Audra was very quiet when she told me. The money my mother had paid toward my brother's down payment was not the trust money. That was gone. This was from her own savings. But it told a complete story about the pattern. About who was protected in that family and who was not. About how my father's carefully arranged gift had been treated as a resource for one child while the other child was left to manage alone. Audra said we had 2 options. We could proceed quietly through civil court. Or we could wait for the housewarming party and let the moment speak for itself. She left the decision to me. I thought about it for one day. I told Audra I wanted to go to the party. She was not surprised. We spent the next week preparing exactly what we would bring with us. Audra filed a formal civil action with the Fulton County Superior Court for breach of fiduciary duty and fraud against my father's trust estate. That filing generated a case number and a court-certified copy of the complaint, which named Patricia Osei as the primary defendant and listed Kofi's Table LLC as a receiving entity. The filing also triggered an automatic notification to the Georgia Attorney General's Financial Crimes Unit because the forged signature elevated the matter to potential criminal territory. That notification was procedural. It went out regardless of my preference. Audra explained this carefully. She was not pursuing criminal charges herself, but the forgery evidence was material and had to be disclosed. What happened next was in other hands. I also called Bernard Holt's office and left a message. He did not call back. His liability insurer did. That told me enough about what Bernard Holt remembered and what he was afraid of. The week before the housewarming, I went to my office and I worked every day with the same focus and the same silence I had always brought to that desk. I did not tell any colleagues what was happening. I did not change anything about my routine. Delphine asked once, in passing, how things were developing. Moving forward, I told her. She nodded, satisfied. She had learned early that I did not need to be managed through things. I just needed to be trusted to see them through. The night before the housewarming, I could not sleep. Not from nerves exactly, but from the particular weight of knowing something that others did not yet know, and knowing that the next morning would change everything. I lay in my apartment and I thought about my father. I thought about those Sunday mornings on the porch, the math quizzes, his careful handwriting in the margins of my textbooks when he helped me study. I thought about the last conversation we had before he got sick, a phone call on a Wednesday evening when he told me he was proud of me and that I was going to be fine. He said it with such certainty, the way he said everything he believed in. He had arranged something to make sure that certainty was backed up. He had done the work to protect me, and someone in our own family had undone it quietly while I stood at his grave grieving him. I got up at 5 in the morning and I made coffee and I sat at my kitchen table, the same way I used to sit at his. I read through Victor Slade's report one more time, not because I needed to, I had nearly memorized it, but because I wanted to carry his honesty into that room with me. Numbers never moved on you. I had 47,000 reasons to walk into that housewarming and say exactly what needed to be said. And then something happened that I did not see coming. Audra called me at 6:15 in the morning. Her voice was measured but tight. "Maya," she said, "I need to tell you something before you go today. Something the Attorney General's office sent over last night." I sat up straighter. "Tell me," I said. The Attorney General's Financial Crimes Unit had moved faster than either Audra or I expected. When they received the forgery disclosure from our civil filing, a junior investigator had run Patricia Osei's name through their existing case database. There was already a flag on her. My mother had been a signatory on a small nonprofit account 2 years earlier, a community outreach fund connected to her church. There were irregularities in that account as well, modest amounts, nothing prosecuted, but enough to generate a notation. Our filing connected her to a second instance of financial document fraud. That made her a pattern. The AG's office had opened a preliminary inquiry the previous evening. They were not yet contacting my mother directly, but they were watching. Audra told me this because she wanted me to understand that the situation had grown larger than our civil case. We were no longer simply recovering money. We were now witnesses in a broader inquiry. She asked me again whether I wanted to proceed today. "This is your family," she said. "And today is going to be very hard. No one would fault you for taking more time." I was quiet for a moment. I thought about Kofi's nervous phone call from the laundromat Saturday. I thought about my mother turning away to laugh at me into her phone. I thought about my father's handwriting in the margins of my old math textbook, neat and patient and careful. "I'm going," I said. "I'll meet you there at 2. Audra said only one word. "Good." The party was already full when I arrived. Kofi had invited neighbors, old friends from college, 2 men I recognized from his failed clothing business days, and a new girlfriend I had never met, a woman named Petra who laughed easily and stood close to him. My mother was in the kitchen, exactly where I expected her to be, surrounded by people complimenting her jollof rice. The house smelled like food and fresh paint and the particular excitement of new ownership. Kofi saw me from across the room and his face did something complicated. The casual smile he put on was a half-second too slow. "Maya." He hugged me. His arms were stiff. "Glad you came." "Of course," I said. I smiled at Petra. I shook hands with neighbors. I ate a small plate of food and I made easy conversation and I gave no indication of anything. My mother came out of the kitchen and saw me and her eyes did what they always did when she was uncertain about me, a quick assessment, A brief calculation. She hugged me. She told me I looked thin. She asked if I was eating properly. I told her I was fine. For 35 minutes, I was simply a guest at a party. I watched my brother show two neighbors the garage. I watched my mother fill plates and accept compliments. And then, at exactly 2 o'clock, the front door opened and Audra Fleming walked in. Audra dressed like someone who understood that presence mattered. Dark suit, low heels, a slim leather folder under her arm. She did not need to announce herself. People noticed her the way people notice someone who moves with complete certainty about why they are in a room. She found me immediately and stood beside me, and I watched the understanding travel across my mother's face in real time. The calculation, then the recognition, then the first edge of something I had never seen there before. Fear. Kofi appeared from the hallway. He looked at Audra, then at me, and he went very still. Audra did not raise her voice. She did not need to. She said, in a completely calm tone, "Mrs. Osei, I represent Maya Osei in a civil matter regarding the trust established by Charles Osei prior to his death. I have some documents I'd like to share with you." The room had not gone silent yet. People were still talking near the food table. But the people closest to us had stopped. My mother's face shifted from fear to a practiced version of offense, the armor she had worn my whole life. "This is my son's home," she said, low and controlled. "This is not the time." Audra opened the leather folder. "I thought you might prefer to be in a familiar setting," she said. She placed the court filing on the counter beside the serving dishes. Then she placed Victor Slade's report. Then the certified copies of the trust transfers. My mother looked at the papers. She did not touch them. In the quiet that was spreading through the room, someone turned down the music. Kofi moved toward the counter. He picked up the top page and I watched him read the first paragraph. His face drained. I had not seen my brother look like that since we were children, and he had broken something he knew could not be fixed. He set the page down. "Maya," he said. My name in his mouth sounded like a door closing. "I didn't know she forged your signature. I want you to know that." My mother's head snapped toward him. "Kofi." One word, a warning, the same tone she had used on us since childhood. But Kofi's face had changed into something I did not recognize. He looked tired. He looked, for the first time since I could remember, like a man who was not going to let someone else take the weight. "I knew the money came from Dad's estate," he said. He said it to me, not to her, looking at me directly. I didn't ask enough questions. That's on me. The room was fully silent now. Petra stood by the hallway door with an expression that said she was reconsidering many things at once. The neighbors near the food table had the particular stillness of people who do not know whether to leave or stay. My mother put her hand flat on the counter. "We are not doing this here," she said. Audra spoke then, gently and clearly. "Mrs. Osei, the Fulton County Superior Court is already doing it. This filing was processed 3 days ago. I wanted Maya to be present when you received it because she has waited 3 years for this moment." My mother looked at me. Truly looked at me, the way she almost never had. "Maya." Her voice had lost the armor. I let the silence hold for one more second. Then I spoke. "You laughed at me," I said. "That was how I started. Not with the money. Not with the law. Just the truth of what she had done that evening at the kitchen table, the specific cruelty of it, so ordinary that she probably forgot it by the time she went to bed. I told you I failed the exam and you laughed, and then you called Kofi because you thought it was funny. And the whole time, you knew that the money Dad left me, the money he arranged specifically so I would have something to stand on, was already gone. You had already sent it to Kofi's restaurant. You had already signed my name to papers I never saw. My voice was steady. I had not planned the words exactly. They came from somewhere below planning. I am not here to destroy this family. I am here because my father deserved better than to have his wishes erased. I deserved better. And I am done pretending that I am the difficult one for saying so. My mother opened her mouth. I kept going. The court will handle the money. That is not why I came today. I came today because I wanted to look at you when you found out that the quiet daughter you overlooked actually paid attention. I paid attention to every number. I paid attention to every date. And I had help from someone who saw me when you did not. I looked at Audra. Then I looked back at my mother. Dad's trust said the money was for my future. I'm going to have one. With or without your blessing. In the silence that followed, nobody moved. What happened in the weeks after the housewarming moved quickly and with the kind of institutional momentum that cannot be stopped by apologies or family pressure. The Fulton County Superior Court granted a judgment in my favor for the full $47,000 plus 3 years of statutory interest, bringing the total to just over $53,000. Patricia Osei was ordered to repay the trust estate. She did not have it all. Her attorney negotiated a payment plan. Kofi, who had voluntarily provided a written statement to Audra confirming that he knew the funds came from my father's estate, cooperated fully with the civil proceedings. Because of that cooperation and the fact that he had not personally forged anything or directed the fraud, the court declined to pursue a separate civil action against him. He was not charged. But the house in Smyrna went on the market within 2 months. He could not cover the mortgage without the financial support that had always come from our mother, and our mother was now managing court-ordered restitution payments. Bernard Holt, the estate attorney who had supervised the transfers, reached a settlement with his liability insurer. His firm quietly closed. The Attorney General's broader inquiry into my mother's financial history was ongoing and outside my control. I did not follow it closely. I had made a decision early on that I would pursue what was mine, and I would not reach for more than that. I did not want to destroy her. I wanted to stop being diminished by her. I passed my CPA exam on my 3rd attempt. I got the score report on a Thursday morning, sitting at my desk before anyone else arrived in the office. I looked at the number for a long time. Then I printed it, folded it once, and walked to Delphine's office. I slid it under her door because she was not in yet. When she arrived and found it, she came straight to my desk and she did not say anything. She just put the paper down in front of me, smoothed, and tapped it once with one finger. That was Delphine's version of a celebration, and I understood it completely. The court's restitution payments began arriving 4 months after the judgment. I opened a savings account I had not had before, and I put every dollar into it while I decided what to do. I eventually used part of the settlement to rent a different apartment, larger, with reliable heat and a parking space that was not a 15-minute walk. I chose it myself. I signed the lease myself. Nobody else had a key. Kofi called me once, 2 months after the housewarming. He did not apologize exactly. He said he had not understood until that day in the kitchen what the money had actually cost me, not the dollars, but everything around them. I listened. I told him I appreciated the call. We are not close. I do not know if we will be. But I left that conversation feeling something I had not expected. Not forgiveness exactly. More like a closing. A clean line drawn at the end of a chapter that had gone on far too long. My father knew I was going to be fine. He was right. He built me something to stand on. And when someone tried to take it, I stood on my own until I got it back. So let me ask you this. If the person who was supposed to protect your future was the one who took it, what would you have done?